I was alone in the countryside house because everyone had left for a full week. The place sat far from the main road, surrounded by open fields, old trees, and long dirt paths that only tractors and delivery trucks ever used. At night, there were no streetlights, no passing cars, no distant noise from neighbors. Just wind, insects, and the quiet weight of open land pressing in from all sides. I had stayed there many times before, so I thought I knew what to expect. That morning started calm. The sky was pale and wide, the kind of sky you only get far from cities. I woke up later than usual because there was no reason to rush. The house creaked as it always did when the sun warmed the wood. Floors shifted slightly. Walls popped quietly. All normal sounds I had learned to ignore over the years. I made breakfast and ate slowly at the table near the window. From there, I could see the field stretching out, yellow grass moving gently in the breeze. Nothing looked out of place. No parked vehicles. No footprints near the fence. No movement near the trees. Just empty land. The day passed slowly. I cleaned, walked outside for a bit, checked the sheds, and came back in before afternoon. The countryside can feel peaceful during the day, but the silence is different from city quiet. It is deeper. It feels like it has space to hide things in it. By late afternoon, clouds rolled in. The light changed fast. Shadows grew longer, and the house felt heavier somehow. I locked the doors without really thinking about it. It was just habit. The kind of habit you build when you live far from people. The first strange thing happened just before evening. I was in the kitchen when I heard a dull thump from the back of the house. Not loud, not sharp, just a single impact like something hitting wood and stopping. I froze and listened. Nothing followed. No footsteps, no second sound. I walked to the back window and looked out. The yard was empty. The shed door was closed. The fence line looked normal. I told myself it was probably something falling over in the wind, even though the air had gone still. As the sun went down, the quiet became thicker. I turned on lights in every room I planned to be in. The rest of the house stayed dark. The hallways felt longer when the lights were off, like they stretched farther than they should. Later, while sitting in the living room, I heard a sound that made my stomach tighten. It came from the side of the house, near the spare room. It sounded like fingers brushing lightly against the wall. Slow, careful. Then it stopped. I muted the television and listened. My breathing felt loud in my ears. I waited for another sound. None came. I stood up and walked through the house slowly, checking each room. Everything looked normal. Doors were closed the way I left them. Windows were locked. Nothing was broken. Nothing was moved. I tried to relax, but the feeling stayed. It felt like something was off, like the house was no longer empty even though I could not see anyone. Night fell completely. Outside the windows, the fields disappeared into blackness. The only thing visible was the reflection of the lights inside the house. I felt exposed, like I was on display without realizing it. Then I heard footsteps. They were faint but clear. Slow steps coming from the far end of the house. The sound of weight shifting on wood. Each step spaced evenly, careful not to rush. I stood frozen in the living room, my heart beating so hard it almost hurt. The footsteps stopped. I waited. My hands were shaking. I could feel sweat forming along my neck and back. I listened for breathing, for movement, for anything. The silence returned, heavier than before. I moved toward the hallway, placing my feet carefully. Halfway down, I noticed something that made my chest drop. One of the doors was open. It had been closed earlier. I was certain of that. I had checked it myself. I did not go any farther. I backed away slowly and returned to the living room. I locked myself in and pushed a chair against the door. My thoughts raced. I replayed the day over and over, trying to find a logical explanation. Hours passed like that. I did not sleep. Every small sound felt like a warning. The house made noises as it cooled, but now every pop and creak felt deliberate. Sometime after midnight, I heard movement outside. Soft crunching sounds from the dirt path near the house. Slow steps, stopping, starting again. I looked through a small gap in the curtain. First, I saw nothing. Then I noticed a shape near the fence line. A person standing still, just beyond the edge of the light from the house. They did not move. They just stood there, facing the house. I pulled back from the window and stayed low. My heart felt like it was trying to break out of my chest. I listened as the steps moved again, closer this time. The sound stopped near the side of the house. A few minutes later, I heard something that confirmed my worst fear. The soft sound of a door handle being tested. Slow pressure, a pause, then release. The person knew I was inside. I stayed silent. I did not move. I did not make a sound. I sat on the floor, my back against the wall, my eyes fixed on the door. Time stretched out. Every second felt sharp and long. Eventually, the sounds stopped. No footsteps, no movement, just the quiet countryside pressing in again. Morning came slowly. Gray light filled the rooms. I waited until the sun was fully up before moving. My body felt stiff and sore, like I had been holding myself too tight all night. I walked through the house carefully. Near the spare room, I found muddy footprints on the floor. They led to the back door. The door was still locked, but there were scratch marks near the frame, fresh and clear. Outside, I followed the footprints until they disappeared into the tall grass near the trees. I did not go any farther. Later that day, after help arrived, the truth became clear. Someone had been watching the house for days. They had been using the old toolshed to hide and move closer at night. They had tested doors, walked through the house while I was distracted, and stood outside in the dark, waiting. They were never caught. I left the countryside house soon after. I do not miss the open fields or the quiet nights. Silence like that is not peaceful anymore. It feels like space for someone to hide. I learned that being alone in the countryside does not mean no one is nearby. It just means there is more room for them to watch without being seen. I was home alone for 5 nights, and I knew that going in. It wasn't sudden or unexpected. My family had planned the trip weeks earlier. I even helped pack the car. I watched them leave. I locked the door behind them and stood in the quiet hallway afterward, listening to the sound of the house settle back into itself. At that moment, it felt normal, peaceful even. The house was a 2-story place at the edge of a quiet neighborhood. No close neighbors, trees lining the back fence, a narrow side yard that never got much sun. The kind of house where sounds carried farther than they should, where footsteps echoed longer than expected, where silence felt too thick at night. The first day passed without anything strange. I moved around freely, played music, cooked food, left lights on wherever I was. Being alone felt like freedom. I slept on the couch that night, fell asleep with the TV on, and woke up just after sunrise with nothing out of place. The second day was different, though I couldn't have explained why at the time. The house felt colder, not temperature-wise, but empty in a way that made me notice every room I walked through. Every doorway felt like it watched me pass. Every reflection in dark windows made me look twice. That night, I locked every door. Front door, back door, side door. I checked the windows, even the ones that never opened. I told myself I was being careful, not scared. I went upstairs to sleep in my room. I left the hallway light on like I always did. I closed my door halfway, the same way I had done since I was a kid. Enough light to spill in. Enough darkness to rest. I woke up around 1:40 a.m. I didn't sit up right away. I stayed still, listening, trying to figure out why I was awake. The house was quiet. No TV, no wind, no cars passing. Just the low hum of the refrigerator downstairs. Then I heard it. A sound from the first floor. It was soft but wrong. A dull scrape against the floor. Not a crash. Not a bang. Something dragging lightly, like someone trying not to make noise. I held my breath. Another sound followed. A short pause. Then a slow step. I knew the house well enough to know where the sound was coming from. The living room, near the couch I had slept on the night before. The floorboards there creaked in a certain pattern. That sound matched it exactly. I waited for the sound to stop, for the house to settle, for the noise to turn into something normal. Didn't. The steps continued, slow and measured, moving toward the hallway. I stayed frozen in bed. My hands were damp. My mouth felt dry. I didn't want to move my head because I was afraid the smallest shift would make noise. The footsteps stopped. Seconds passed. Maybe minutes. It felt longer than it was. Then the stairs creaked. The stairs were old and unforgiving. Every step complained. Whoever was on them knew where to step. The sounds were spaced carefully, like the person had practiced. Step, pause, step. The sound climbed higher. I stared at my door. The handle didn't move. The door didn't open. The light in the hallway stayed the same. No shadow crossed under the door. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs and stopped. I listened to the silence so hard my ears hurt. My heart was pounding so loud I was sure it could be heard through the walls. I expected something to happen. A door opening. A sudden movement. A mistake. Nothing happened. After a long time, the footsteps went back down the stairs. I didn't sleep again that night. When morning came, I checked the house. Every room, every corner. Nothing looked disturbed. Doors were locked. Windows closed. Nothing missing. I told myself it was stress. Lack of sleep. My mind filling in gaps. The third night proved me wrong. I stayed up late, lights on, phone in hand. Around 2 a.m., I heard the back gate creak open. The sound came from outside, muffled but clear. The gate always made that sound. I had heard it 100 times. I sat up straight. Then I heard the back door handle turn. It didn't open. It just turned slightly, testing the lock. Once, then again slower. I didn't move. The handle stopped. A few seconds later, the basement door made a dull thud. The basement wasn't part of the main living area. It had its own entrance from outside and a door inside the house. I never used it at night. I rarely went down there at all. I heard footsteps on the basement stairs. Heavy this time, not careful, confident. The sound of movement spread through the house. Drawers opening, cabinets closing, the fridge door, footsteps moving freely. Whoever it was knew no one else was there. At some point, the footsteps came upstairs again. Slower than before. They stopped outside my room. I stared at the door handle for a long time. It never moved. The footsteps eventually went back down. The basement door closed. I stayed awake until daylight again. In the morning, I noticed dirt on the kitchen floor. Faint shoe prints leading from the basement door toward the back exit. I checked the basement window behind the shelves. It was open just a crack. I packed a bag that afternoon. I didn't leave right away. I wanted proof. I wanted to know I wasn't imagining it. That night, I set my phone to record video in the hallway. I locked myself in my room and waited. The sounds started after midnight. Footsteps, drawers, slow movement. Then the footsteps stopped outside my door. The phone caught it all. In the video later, I saw the hallway light dim slightly as a shape blocked it. Not a clear face, just a human outline standing still for nearly 3 minutes. Then it moved away. I left the house the next morning and went straight to the police. They searched the basement and found signs of someone staying there. Food wrappers, old clothes, a blanket tucked behind boxes. Someone had been living inside the house without me knowing. They told me the person had likely been watching the house for weeks, waiting for the right moment, learning when it was empty, learning how to move without being heard. They never meant to rush. They never meant to scare me. They were just careful. I never stayed in that house alone again. Even now, years later, what stays with me isn't the fear. It's the patience. The way someone can be so close, so quiet, and wait until you are completely alone. I had the house to myself for the first time in years. My parents were out of town for a week. My phone had spotty service because of a storm system moving through, and the neighborhood was quiet in that way that feels unnatural, like everyone agreed to leave at the same time. I remember locking the door behind them and standing there for a moment, listening to the sound of the engine fade down the street. When it was gone, the silence felt heavier than it should have. The house was old but well kept. 2 floors, a basement, wood floors that creaked even when no one was walking on them. I had grown up there, so none of it was unfamiliar. but being alone inside it made every room feel bigger. The ceilings felt higher. The hallways felt longer. Sounds didn't get swallowed the way they normally did when people were around. The first day was normal. I cleaned a little, cooked food, watched TV. The rain started in the evening, slow at first, then heavier. By night, the wind was pushing against the siding hard enough that the house made low groaning sounds. I checked the doors out of habit, even though I knew they were locked. Front door, back door, basement door, all secure. I went upstairs around midnight. I left the lights on downstairs because the dark felt different that night. Not scary in a movie way, just uncomfortable. The kind of dark that makes your chest feel tight. I brushed my teeth, changed clothes, and got into bed. The rain was loud enough to cover most outside noise, and eventually I fell asleep. I woke up sometime after 2 a.m. I didn't know why at first. I just knew I was awake and alert in a way that didn't make sense. The rain had slowed to a steady drizzle. The house was quiet again. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening. That was when I heard it. A sound from downstairs. Not a bang or anything sudden. It was softer. A long, slow creak, like weight shifting on wood. The kind of sound floors make when someone steps down carefully. I told myself it was the house settling. It did that all the time. But this sound didn't fade. It was followed by another, then another, spaced out, moving. I sat up in bed. I listened harder, trying to catch the pattern. The sounds were coming from the living room, directly below my bedroom. Whatever was making them wasn't rushing. It moved slowly, deliberately. I could almost imagine bare feet pressing into the floorboards, avoiding the spots that creaked the loudest. I stayed still, barely breathing. After a minute, the sound stopped. The silence that followed was worse. I waited for the house to make its usual noises. Pipes, wind, anything. But it stayed quiet, like it was holding its breath with me. Eventually, I convinced myself I was overreacting. I lay back down, pulled the blanket tighter, and closed my eyes. Then the sound came again. This time it was closer, at the base of the stairs. The stairs were old and narrow, and every step had its own voice. I knew which ones screamed and which ones whispered. I listened as something began to climb them. Slow, careful, one step at a time, pausing between each one, as if whoever it was listening too. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I didn't move. I didn't reach for my phone. I was scared the slightest motion would give me away. The steps reached the top of the stairs and stopped. I stared at my bedroom door. It was slightly open, just enough to let the hallway light spill in. The hallway light was still on because I always left it on at night. The light didn't change. No shadow crossed it. Nothing moved. Minutes passed. My legs were numb. My mouth was dry. Then I heard breathing. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was slow, controlled breathing, coming from the hallway just outside my room. Whoever it was stood there, not touching anything, not moving, just breathing. I wanted to believe it was my imagination, but the sound had weight to it. Rhythm, presence. The breathing shifted slightly, like the person leaned closer to the door. I squeezed my eyes shut and waited for something to happen. For the door to open, for footsteps to enter the room, for the breathing to stop. None of that happened. Instead, the breathing moved away. Slow steps retreated down the hall. The stairs creaked again, this time going down. I stayed awake until morning, staring at the door, listening to every sound the house made. When the sun finally came up, I felt sick with exhaustion and fear. I checked the house in daylight. Every room, every corner. Nothing was out of place. Doors were locked. Windows were closed. There were no signs of forced entry. I told myself I had a nightmare, even though I knew I hadn't been asleep when it happened. The second night was worse. I tried to stay awake, drinking coffee, keeping the lights on. Around 3 a.m., I heard the back door handle jiggle once. Just a quick test, like someone checking if it was locked. Then nothing. A few minutes later, the basement door creaked. The basement stairs were steep and unfinished. The sound of someone stepping onto them echoed more than the others. I heard it clearly this time. Someone was inside the house, I grabbed my phone and checked the time. No signal. Just one weak bar that disappeared as soon as I tried to call. I locked myself in my room and waited. Footsteps moved through the house again, slower than before, more confident. I heard drawers open downstairs, cabinets, the refrigerator door. Whoever it was wasn't rushing. They were comfortable, like they had done this before. At some point, the footsteps stopped directly outside my door. I stared at the handle, waiting for it to turn. Didn't. After a long time, the footsteps moved away again, back down the stairs into the basement. When morning came, I found muddy footprints near the back door, faint but real. There were scratches around the basement door frame, like someone had forced it at some point and fixed it badly. That afternoon, I found a loose window in the basement, hidden behind shelves. Could be opened from the outside. I didn't stay another night. The police came later. They found signs that someone had been using the basement when the house was empty. Food wrappers, a blanket, a flashlight. Someone had been living there off and on, slipping in at night, learning the sounds of the house, learning my schedule. What scared me most wasn't that someone broke in. It was how careful they were. They never rushed, never made a mistake, never tried the door when I was awake enough to react. They listened, they waited, they stayed just out of sight. I still think about the breathing outside my door sometimes, not because of how close it was, but because of how patient it sounded, like whoever it was knew I was there, and knew I wasn't going anywhere. I was alone in the house because everyone else had left early that morning. It was not sudden or dramatic. It was planned days ahead. A quiet weekend, no guests, no visits, no reason for anyone to come by. The house sat at the edge of a small neighborhood, not isolated enough to feel rural, but far enough from the main road that nights were silent. I had lived there long enough to know every sound it normally made. The pipes clicking when the water cooled, the fridge motor turning on, the soft pop from the wooden stairs as the temperature changed. That morning felt normal. I woke up late, moved slowly, and did not rush anything. I noticed the silence more than usual, but that happens when you know you are truly alone. No footsteps, no background noise, no movement in other rooms. I locked the front door after checking it twice out of habit, then went back inside and started my day. By afternoon, the weather turned gray. The light outside flattened, making the rooms look dull and heavy. I turned on a few lamps even though it was not dark yet. The house felt larger when it was quiet. Every room seemed to hold its breath. I moved between the kitchen and living room, cleaning small things, keeping myself busy without thinking too much. It started with something so small that I almost ignored it. A soft sound from upstairs. Not loud, not sudden, just a single, short noise, like something brushing against wood. I stopped what I was doing and waited. The sound did not repeat. Houses make noises, especially older ones. I told myself that and continued. A few minutes later, it happened again. This time, it sounded closer to the stair landing. I stood still, my hands resting on the counter, my body leaning forward without realizing it. I waited longer. Nothing followed. No footsteps, no creaking steps, just silence again. I walked to the bottom of the stairs and looked up. The hallway light upstairs was off. The hallway looked darker than it should have, like the shadows were thicker at the top. I did not go up. I stayed where I was and listened. The air felt colder, or maybe I was paying attention now. I went back into the living room and sat down, turning on the television without really watching it. The sound filled the space and made me feel less exposed. My eyes kept drifting toward the hallway that led to the stairs. I tried to focus on the screen, but my attention kept slipping. Another sound came from upstairs. This one was different. It was longer, like something being dragged slowly across the floor. Not heavy, but deliberate. The sound stopped halfway through, then did not continue. My chest tightened. I muted the television and listened hard. Silence again. I stayed seated for a long time, longer than felt normal. My legs felt stiff when I stood up. I told myself that if something was wrong, I needed to check. I could not sit there imagining things. I picked up my phone and held it tightly, even though I did not plan to use it. I climbed the stairs slowly, placing my feet carefully to avoid noise. Each step creaked softly under my weight. At the top, I paused and looked down the hallway. The doors to the bedrooms were all closed. The bathroom door was slightly open, just as I had left it earlier. I walked the hallway slowly, checking each door without opening them. Nothing looked out of place at first. No signs of forced entry. No mess. The air smelled the same. I stood there, feeling foolish for letting my mind run. When I turned back toward the stairs, I noticed something small that I knew was wrong. One of the picture frames on the hallway wall was crooked. It had been straight that morning. I was certain of it because I had fixed it before leaving the room earlier. I stepped closer and adjusted it, trying to calm myself. My hand shook slightly. I stood there for a moment, listening again. Nothing. I went back downstairs and locked the back door, then checked every window on the first floor. All were locked. Curtains were drawn. The house was sealed the way it should be. As evening came, the feeling did not leave. It grew heavier. I cooked dinner but barely ate. Every small sound made my head turn. The house felt different now, like it was not fully empty even though I knew it should be. Later that night, I heard a sound that I could not explain away. It came from the kitchen, sharp and clear. The sound of a cabinet door closing. Not slamming, not falling. Closing. I froze in the living room. The lights were on. The television was still muted. I waited, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I listened for footsteps. I listened for breathing. Nothing followed. I walked into the kitchen slowly. One of the lower cabinets was shut all the way. It was the cabinet where I had left cleaning supplies earlier, and I clearly remembered leaving it open. I stood there staring at it, my mind racing. I opened the cabinet. Everything inside looked normal. I closed it again, carefully this time, making sure it latched properly. I stepped back and looked around the room. Nothing else was out of place. I did not sleep that night. I stayed on the couch with all the lights on. Every time I started to drift, another small sound would pull me back. Tap, a soft movement, something that felt too controlled to be random. Near early morning, I heard footsteps above me, slow, even, crossing the upstairs hallway. I sat up fully, my body stiff, my breathing shallow. The steps stopped above the living room, directly over where I was sitting. I waited. My entire body felt locked in place. After a long pause, the footsteps moved again, this time toward the stairs. They stopped at the top. Nothing came down. After a while, the sound faded away. When daylight came, I did not feel relief. The house looked normal again, but the feeling stayed. I went upstairs and searched every room carefully. I checked closets, under beds, behind doors. In the last bedroom, I found something that made everything clear. The attic access panel in the ceiling was slightly open, just enough to notice. Dust fell onto the floor beneath it. The ladder was still folded up, but the panel had been moved. I stood there staring at it, my mind finally connecting everything. The sounds, the movement, the closed cabinet. Someone had been inside the house the entire time, hiding above me, moving only when I thought I was distracted or asleep. I left the house immediately. I did not gather anything except my keys and phone. I locked the door behind me and went straight to a neighbor's house. Later, when authorities searched the attic, they found signs that someone had been staying there for days. Food wrappers, a thin blanket, marks where someone had been watching through the vents. Nothing else happened after that. No chase, no confrontation. The person was never found. I moved out not long after. Even now, I cannot sit in a quiet house without listening too closely. I still notice every sound, because I learned something I will never forget. Being home alone does not always mean being alone. I was home alone for the first time in that house after everyone left for a short trip. The plan was simple and normal. I would stay behind, keep an eye on the place, and enjoy the quiet. The house was not new, but it was well kept. 2 floors, a basement, and a small garage attached to the side. It sat in a calm neighborhood where nothing really happened. I had lived there long enough to know the usual sounds, the way the floors creaked, the way the pipes knocked at night, and how the wind sometimes pushed against the windows. That afternoon felt normal. I moved around the house, cleaning small things, opening windows for fresh air, letting sunlight fill the rooms. The quiet felt comfortable at first. There was no pressure to talk, no background noise except the hum of the fridge and the distant sound of cars far away. I locked the front door after checking the mail and did not think twice about it. As evening came, the house changed the way it always does. Shadows stretched across the walls. Corners felt darker. The silence felt heavier. I turned on a few lights even though it was not fully dark yet. I made food and ate alone at the table, scrolling on my phone, trying not to think about how empty the house felt. The first thing that caught my attention was a sound from the basement. A short, dull noise, like something shifting on concrete. I paused and listened. Basements always make sounds. Air pressure changes. Pipes move. I told myself that and continued eating. A few minutes later, I heard it again. This time it sounded closer to the bottom of the stairs. Not loud, not rushed, just a slow scrape that stopped suddenly. My stomach tightened. I stayed still and listened harder. Nothing followed. I stood up and walked to the basement door. It was closed, just like I had left it. I placed my hand on the knob and felt the cold metal under my fingers. I did not open it. Something about the silence behind the door felt wrong. I stepped back and went into the living room instead. I turned on the television just to fill the space with sound. The light from the screen flickered across the walls. My eyes kept drifting toward the hallway that led to the basement door. Every few seconds, I expected something to happen. Later that night, I turned off most of the lights and went upstairs to get ready for bed. The hallway upstairs felt longer than usual. The air felt still and heavy. I checked each room out of habit. Everything looked normal. Doors were closed. Windows were locked. Nothing was out of place. I lay down but did not sleep right away. The house made its usual night noises, but now each one felt sharper. A creak here, pop there. I listened too closely, waiting for a sound that did not belong. Then I heard it. Footsteps, slow and careful, coming from downstairs. Not random creaks, not settling wood. Real steps, spaced evenly, moving across the floor. My heart started pounding so hard it hurt. I sat up in bed, barely breathing. The footsteps stopped. I waited, frozen, listening so hard my ears rang. After a long pause, the steps started again, this time moving toward the stairs. I could hear the faint shift of weight with each step. Whoever it was moved slowly, like they were trying not to make noise. The sound reached the bottom of the stairs and stopped. I stayed completely still. My body felt tight and cold. I did not move my head. I did not reach for my phone. I just listened. A few seconds later, the first stair creaked. Then another. The sound stopped halfway up. I pressed myself deeper into the mattress, my heart racing. I waited for the next step, but it never came. Instead, I heard a soft sound from the hallway outside my room, a door handle moving slightly, then stopping. I realized then that someone was inside the house, and they were checking rooms. I stayed silent for what felt like hours. My muscles ached from holding still. My mouth felt dry. I listened as faint movements continued outside the door. Slow steps, short pauses, careful movement. Eventually, the sounds faded. I did not know where they went. Downstairs, into another room, maybe back into the basement. I did not sleep. I watched the door until the room slowly filled with early morning light. When the sun finally came up, I felt no relief. The fear stayed with me, heavy and real. I waited until the house felt awake again. Then I got out of bed. I walked through the upstairs carefully. Near the bathroom, I saw something that made my chest drop. One of the drawers was open. I knew I had closed it the night before. I closed it slowly and kept moving. Downstairs, the living room looked normal at first. The television was off. The furniture was in place. Then I noticed the basement door. It was open, just a few inches, but enough to notice. Cold air drifted up from below. I stood there staring at it, my heart pounding again. I had left that door closed. I stepped back and grabbed the nearest object I could find. I approached the door slowly and pushed it open the rest of the way. The basement was dark. The smell of damp concrete filled the air. I turned on the light. At the bottom of the stairs, I saw muddy footprints on the floor, fresh ones. They led across the basement toward the storage area. I followed them slowly, my hands shaking. Behind the shelves, I found signs that someone had been there. A blanket folded roughly, empty food wrappers, a phone charger plugged into an outlet. Someone had been living in the basement without me knowing. They had waited until I was alone. Later, after the house was checked, everything made sense. The noises, the footsteps, the careful movement. The person had been hiding in the basement for days, watching, learning my habits, moving only when they thought I would not notice. They left sometime before morning. They were never found. I moved out soon after. I did not take much with me, just what I needed. I could not stay in a place where I had been watched without knowing. Even now, I cannot be alone in a house without listening for footsteps. I cannot ignore small sounds, because I learned something the hard way. Being home alone does not always mean the house is empty. Sometimes it just means you are the only one who does not know you are not alone. I was alone in the house late at night, sitting on the couch, scrolling aimlessly on my phone while the TV played quietly in the background. The volume was low, just enough to have some noise in the room, but not loud enough to cover everything. Outside, darkness stretched over the yard like a heavy blanket, with only the backyard motion light piercing through the blackness. I wasn't expecting anything to happen, just a quiet night to myself. But when the motion light flicked on, I froze for a moment. At first, I tried to rationalize it. Cats, a stray raccoon, wind blowing leaves across the sensor, insects hitting it, even my neighbor walking by. Anything could trigger it. Usually, the light flickered for a few seconds and shut off. But this time, it stayed on. Longer than usual. My stomach tightened a little. I told myself to relax, leaned back, and watched it. The minutes ticked by. The light remained stubbornly bright. I kept glancing at the window, trying to see if anything was moving, but the yard was empty. The trees swayed gently in the breeze, but that was all. I leaned closer to the window, squinting into the dark, and as soon as I leaned back to the couch, the light went off. I exhaled, feeling a little foolish, telling myself I was overthinking things. Maybe it really was nothing. 30 seconds later, it switched back on. My stomach sank. This time, I stayed where I was and watched carefully. The light flickered ever so slightly, as if something or someone was just at the edge of its range, moving in small, deliberate bursts. Step, freeze, step, freeze. The light's pattern wasn't random anymore. It seemed deliberate, like whoever or whatever was outside was testing the sensor, creeping along carefully, staying just out of sight. I turned off the TV to listen more closely. Silence. No footsteps crunching on the grass. No rustling in the leaves. Nothing. Only that cold, harsh light shining from outside. The yard felt impossibly still, the way it does right before a storm hits, but the air was calm. Then, without warning, the power in the house went out. Just like that. The room dropped into darkness, and my phone's screen dimmed. The TV went dead. Only the motion light outside stayed on, bathing the backyard in its sterile glow. My heart started pounding in my chest. I didn't move. I didn't breathe too loudly. I just stared at the back door. A soft, nearly imperceptible sound reached me from the direction of the door. Not a knock, not the jiggling of a handle, just a faint scrape, like something brushing against the doorframe. My mind raced. I wanted to convince myself it was just a branch, or maybe a small animal brushing against the siding. But I knew the sound. It was deliberate, careful, patient. Someone was standing there. I stayed frozen, willing the seconds to pass without incident. The sound stopped. The light outside continued to glare, revealing nothing. Time stretched on like a rope being pulled taut. Minutes felt like hours. My hands ached from gripping the edge of the couch. My legs were stiff, stuck under me in a tense posture. my ears strained for the smallest hint of movement. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the motion light shut off. The yard returned to darkness. I stayed exactly where I was, not daring to move, not daring to make a sound. Eventually, I forced myself to breathe again. The silence of the house pressed in from every side. I didn't sleep that night, not a single minute. I lay on the couch, staring at the back door, waiting for the sun to rise, waiting for the yard to be visible again in natural light. When morning finally came, I moved cautiously toward the back door. The sunlight softened the edges of the shadows in the yard, making everything look safer somehow, though I knew the danger from the night before had been very real. I knelt and examined the area beneath the motion sensor. My stomach dropped when I saw muddy shoe prints pressed into the ground. They were positioned deliberately, just below the sensor, angled in a way that suggested someone had been standing there carefully, close enough to trigger the light without being seen through the window. Every step had been calculated. Every pause had been intentional. I checked the rest of the backyard. The grass was flattened in a few other places, as if someone had crept around the side of the house and back toward the trees. Nothing had been stolen, nothing broken, but the footprints told a clear story. Someone had been there, watching, waiting, and they had known exactly what they were doing. I went inside, locking the door behind me, and immediately called the police. They arrived an hour later, their presence both comforting and uncomfortable. They examined the yard, the windows, and the doors. There were no signs of forced entry, no scratches on the door handles, just the footprints. They told me that whoever had been outside had likely stayed in the shadows, watched the house, and left without leaving much evidence behind. The calm, quiet patience of the intruder made it clear they had done this before. They had calculated every move. I spent the next few days installing extra locks and motion sensors inside the house, adding security cameras where the old ones didn't cover. I stayed with a friend for a while, unable to face being alone again. Even after the cameras were installed, I felt a strange tension every time I looked out the windows at night. Every shadow, every flicker of light, set my nerves on edge. Weeks later, I reviewed the footage from the night of the power outage. It was grainy, but unmistakable. A human figure had moved across the backyard, slow, careful, precise. The person had stayed just long enough to make their presence known to the motion light, but not to me. The outline lingered near the sensor for minutes, frozen in place like a predator waiting for an opportunity, before slipping out of view. The footage showed nothing else. No face, no details, just that patient, deliberate presence. I never figured out exactly who it was or what they had wanted, but the experience changed the way I felt about being alone. I stopped staying home by myself overnight. I double-checked every lock, every window, and every motion sensor before bed. I stopped leaving lights off at night. The fear didn't disappear, but I learned to live with it, to respect it, because it had been real. It had been deliberate. The most important lesson I took from it, the thing that stayed with me the longest, wasn't fear of someone breaking in. It was the realization that someone could be patient, careful, and close enough to see everything without being seen themselves. That night had been a warning, a reminder that danger doesn't always come with noise or chaos. Sometimes it comes silently, in the deliberate pause of a motion light and the faint scrape of a shoe against a door frame. I installed stronger locks on every door and reinforced the windows. I never left the house alone at night again. And even years later, when I pass the same backyard or see a motion light flicker unexpectedly, my pulse still quickens. Because I know patience can be terrifying, and sometimes the scariest presence is the one that waits. I was home alone past midnight, lying on the couch and scrolling aimlessly through my phone. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like it's holding its breath, except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the floorboards. I had double-checked all the doors and windows before settling in, so I was certain no one else was inside. My family had gone out for the evening, and I was supposed to have the house to myself until morning. Then I heard it, a faint, steady sound, almost like a whisper at first. I paused, trying to ignore it, but it didn't go away. It wasn't the usual settling noises the old house made. the kind that happen when pipes expand or wood shifts. This was continuous, wet, steady, running water. I muted the TV, my phone lying face down on the couch. Silence filled the living room, except for the sound coming from upstairs. It was unmistakable. Someone or something was using the bathroom. I froze at the bottom of the stairs, staring up into the dark. The hallway above was pitch black, the stairwell casting long shadows in the dim light from the living room. My heart started pounding, but I told myself it was impossible. I had locked the house. No one could be inside. Maybe it was a pipe burst, I reasoned, an old plumbing issue that had somehow started in the middle of the night. That seemed reasonable. It had to be. Still, the sound didn't stop. It was the unmistakable patter of water hitting tile, followed by the gurgle of drainage. It was coming from the bathroom at the end of the hall, just past the top of the stairs. I took a deep breath and climbed halfway up the stairs, careful not to make a sound. The carpet muffled my steps, but every little noise felt amplified in the silence. I stopped, listening. The sound became clearer, sharper. Water hitting the tub, the subtle hiss of it draining. It was real, undeniably real. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. Instantly. No slow fade, no dripping, just silence. The kind of silence that makes every nerve in your body tighten. I froze, gripping the railing, unsure of what to do. My mind raced through every rational explanation I could think of. Maybe a burst pipe had suddenly stopped. Maybe a timer on some old water heater had activated. But none of it made sense. I had checked the bathroom before locking up. No faucets left running. No leaks. Nothing. I didn't go any further. Not up the stairs, not into the hallway, not near the bathroom. I backed down, slowly, careful not to make a sound, and retreated to the living room. I locked the doors behind me, double-checked the windows, and sat down. My phone screen felt heavy in my hand, the light from it flickering over the walls. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, that I was imagining it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something had been upstairs. I stayed on the couch for the rest of the night, barely sleeping. Every little creak of the house made my stomach twist. Every wind gust against the siding sounded like someone moving outside. I didn't dare go upstairs, didn't dare check the bathroom. I kept the lights on, my phone in hand, ready to call for help at the first sign of movement. Morning finally came, and the sunlight spilled into the living room like a welcome relief. The quiet seemed normal again. The house just an old structure filled with familiar sounds. I waited a few moments to calm myself, then made my way upstairs. Every step felt loud in my ears, echoing down the hall. I approached the bathroom cautiously. The bathroom was dry, spotlessly dry. The tile gleamed in the morning light, the faucets and tub completely untouched. No moisture, no steam, no sign that water had been running at all. My stomach sank. I inspected every corner. Nothing. I ran my hands over the tile, over the sink, the counters. Not a single drop. I opened the cabinets. Empty. I checked the shower head. Dry. Everything as it should be. No leaks, no splashes, no evidence of someone being in there. I went back downstairs, trying to convince myself that the noise had been some strange plumbing glitch, some trick of the house. But the feeling of unease didn't leave me. Something had been upstairs. Something had been in that bathroom. I couldn't explain it, and that made it worse. Later that day, I noticed something I had missed before. The attic access panel above the bathroom was slightly ajar. My heart sank. I hadn't opened it, and I was certain my family hadn't either. I stood under it and looked up, squinting into the dim space above the ceiling. The insulation beneath the panel was compressed, flattened in a way that suggested weight. Someone had been lying there, long enough to leave an impression. It all clicked then. The running water, the silence, the sudden stopping. Whoever had been in my house hadn't used the bathroom to get water or anything else. They had been hiding in the attic above it, lying in the insulation, listening, waiting. The sound of the water had been them moving carefully, shifting around, testing the space, trying to see if I was awake or alone. I inspected the attic carefully, but it was empty now. Whoever had been up there was long gone. I shivered, imagining the night. Someone above me, just inches away, silent and patient. The knowledge that I had been entirely unaware of them, and that they could have dropped down or moved at any moment, made my skin crawl. I called the police. They came immediately, checking the attic and the entire house. No signs of forced entry, no footprints, no fingerprints. Just the evidence in the attic, the compressed insulation and the slightly open panel. They told me it was possible someone had gained access through an unlocked roof vent or climbed from a neighboring property. Whoever it was had been careful, experienced, and knew how to avoid leaving obvious traces. After that, I installed locks on the attic access, reinforced the bathroom ceiling, and added motion sensors with cameras pointing at every corner of the house. I didn't stay alone after that night. I stayed with friends or in other locations whenever I was supposed to be home by myself. The fear stayed with me long after the physical evidence was gone. I never figured out who it had been or why they had chosen that night. But I learned a lesson I will never forget. Someone can be in your house without leaving a trace, waiting silently in spaces you never think to check, listening to your every move, patient enough to remain undetected. Even now, years later, I still check the attic access every time I enter that bathroom. The house feels different to me. The quiet is no longer comforting. It's tense, like it's holding a secret. The memory of that night stays with me, a reminder that safety is often just an assumption, and vigilance is the only thing that can make it real. That night changed the way I live. Locks, sensors, cameras, none of it feels excessive to me anymore. And every time I hear water running in the middle of the night, even in the safest of houses, I still pause, frozen for a moment, listening. Because I know now that someone could be above you, moving silently in the insulation, waiting for a chance that might never come, but could have come.